Hi, folks. So we are in our second study. We're in the Worldview Analysis course, Class 2. And our textbook for this is Ronald Nash's book. And if I'll show you here. So this is the book. This is the textbook for this. Okay, Worldviews in Conflict. Ronald H. Nash. That is the book that we're looking at. And we're on page 26. Okay. So just to recap what he was saying before. So we're looking at the non-theoretical foundations of theoretical thought. It's a bit of a mouthful, but he's basically talked about, let's say you're debating someone or talking to someone on abortion. What he's saying is, wait a minute, this person who's talking to you on abortion, they have a worldview, and that worldview informs that why they're talking or what they're saying about abortion. So if that person, and also if you look at the worldview, the big picture of what they believe, there'll be contradictions within it. So, for example, if they say murder is you can abort a baby and murder a baby and it's okay, it's right. You can say to them, do you believe in the God? They say no. And then you say, well, how do you know what's right and wrong then? And then you get into all sorts of problems. So the fact that they don't believe in God is part of their worldview, informing about abortion. So when you're talking to someone, get them to map out their worldview. And once you know the big picture of their worldview, you can unravel it for them. Show the inconsistency of their position. So if you're talking to a Muslim and they say that the Bible's changed, you can say, well, let me look at your worldview. What's your worldview? They said God is one. Okay, God is one, yeah. We believe the Quran, believe Muhammad is a prophet. Okay, so that's their worldview. Now I know their worldview. I knew it before, but now I get it from them. I can say, well, if God is one, does the Quran teach that God is love? Is there a Quran verse that said God is love? No. Well, if God is love, how could he love if there was nobody there? Yeah. So you're looking at the overall picture of their worldview and critiquing it. That's what worldview analysis does. It's kind of like, imagine you've got an army of 10,000 men and 500 tanks. And they've got an army of 5,000 men and a few hundred tanks, right? You can go on the battlefield and one tank fight one tank. But it would be wise of you to take stock of the whole battlefield to see how many soldiers are there, how many tanks you're facing. That's worldview analysis. Rather than going into just on a specific argument or detailed argument, you're pulling back and you're saying, wait a minute, all right, you want to debate me or talk to me on this topic, okay? But I want to see the big picture. I want to see the big picture of your worldview. Once you get the big picture, once you get a map of the battlefield, you can see the weaknesses and the contradictions in your enemy. And that is worldview analysis. While the title for this section may appear unnecessarily technical, it is the best language to introduce an intensely important point. A number of Christian writers have attempted to draw attention to the fact that the kinds of theoretical thinking we find in science, philosophy, even theology, are often strongly affected by non-theoretical considerations. It is hard to ignore the personal dimensions that enter into one's acceptance and evaluation of a worldview, including a religious system like Christianity. It would be foolish to pretend that human beings are always handle such matters impersonally and objectively, without reference to considerations rooted in their psychological makeup. Many people demonstrate that they are often incapable of thinking clearly about their worldview. Most of us have met people or come across the writings of those who appear so captivated to a conceptual scheme that they seem incapable of giving a fair hearing to any argument or bit of evidence that appears to threaten their system. This is true both of theist and non-theist. When you are discussing something with someone and that person comes across and says, oh, like they're trying to come across as intellectual, objective, the reality is there are things underpinning their thinking, issues, and, like, for example, I'll give you an example. Let's say when it never happened, but imagine I was 10 years of age and a group of men beat me up, right? And ever since then, I've been angry at God. Why did God allow that, right? So that's under the surface here. It never happened, this, but I'm just imagine. And imagine years later, I don't believe in God, and I'm angry at God because of what happened to me when I was 10 years of age. So now I'm talking to this Christian evangelist, and he's sharing about Jesus or whatever. But I'm not listening. I'm dismissing everything. Why? Because my worldview is shaping that. When I was hurt at 10 years of age, that has colored my thinking. So what we're saying is, sometimes when we're engaged in intellectual discourse, there are things bubbling under the surface that is influencing that person's thinking. So you need to find out what their worldview is. Why are they thinking like that? So the Christian could say, can you tell me what your big picture is about life? And the person might say, well, I think life's unfair because when I was a child, I got beat up when I was 10 years of age. And I think there's suffering in the world. And so I just think we got to grit our teeth and get on with life. And I can't understand why God allowed suffering. Now you've got a big picture. Now you've got a really big picture of their way of thinking and how they are approaching things. Then you can unpick what they've just said. But you wouldn't have got that information if you were just debating and discussing, did Jesus rise from the dead? And they're dismissing it. They're not listening because they're being influenced by that experience they had when they were 10 years of age, you see. Do you get my point? So basically, scratch beneath the surface. When you're talking to people, scratch between the surface. Dig a little to find out where they're at, what they're thinking. Be genuine about it. Don't do it just to win an argument, but do it because you really want to know where they're coming from, and that will help you to show where you're coming from. Okay? Sometimes people have difficulty with competing claims and systems because of philosophical presuppositions. But often their theoretical judgments seem inordinately affected by non-theoretical factors. I mean, basically, when they have philosophical or theological thinking, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's because of that, because of their theology or because of their philosophy or because of their science. It might be personal issues. Sometimes these non-theoretical factors are unique to the particular person, rooted in his or her personal history. Some writers have suggested that another type of non-theoretical influence affects our thinking. According to them, human thoughts and actions have religious roots in the sense that they are related to the human heart, the center of attitude towards religion. Human beings are never neutral with regard to God. Either we worship God as creator and Lord, or we turn away from God. Because the heart is directed either towards God or against him, theoretical thinking is never so pure or autonomous as many would like to think. So someone who says they don't believe in God, there's more to it than that. So for example, if you say to an atheist, look, if I provide you with all the evidence that there is a God, would you believe? And some atheists will say, no, even if you provide me with all the evidence, I wouldn't believe. So there you're seeing that it's not about argumentation. It's not even about evidence. The reason why they don't believe is because of something personal in their life. Because you've offered to give them the evidence and you've said to them, if it is going to show you that there is a God, would you still believe in such a God? And some atheists will say, no. Showing you that it's not just an intellectual problem. There's also emotional stuff going on. And we have to dig and find out where they're at, you see. Human beings are never neutral with regard to God. Either we worship God as creator and Lord, or we turn away from God because the heart is directed towards God or against him. Theoretical thinking is never so pure or autonomous as many would like to think. I think he should temper the language. You don't need to use that kind of language. Just keep it simple. While this line of thinking raises questions that cannot be explored further in this book, it does seem that some who appear to reject Christianity on rational or theoretical grounds are in fact acting under the influence of non-rational factors. That is, more ultimate commitments of their hearts. People should be encouraged to dig below the surface and uncover the basic philosophical and religious presuppositions that often appear to control their thinking. I was watching a program the other day about these Australians, and they have these tractors, and they go in the middle of the outback of Australia and they start digging and panning for gold. And there was one guy, and he found a little piece of gold on the surface with his metal detector. He said, I found it. Yeah. Also, some of the guys, they had big tractors and they dug big holes. When you are going to do evangelism, when you are going to do apologetics, you're also going on a mining expedition. You're going on a mining expedition. When you're engaging with a Muslim or an atheist or a Hindu or a Sikh or a Mormon or a Jehovah's Witness, go on a mining expedition. Ask questions that get to know why they believe what they believe. Get to know their worldview. Get to know why they've come to the conclusion that they came to. Some of it will be rational, some of it won't. But once you go on the digging expedition, ask them questions and listen to them, you get a map of what the problem is. And you can say, oh, I see now. And then you can bring in the truth. Go on a mining expedition. Ask questions. Why do you believe what you believe? And see what they say. And then you can share your thoughts. I don't like the word non-theoretical thought. I think it's a bit too abstract. Keep it simple. Though the influence of non-theoretical factors on people's thinking is often extensive, it is never total in the sense that it precludes life-altering changes. The case of Saul of Tarsus, one of the early Christian great enemies, a person fanatically committed to a system that seemed to rule out any possibility of his change or conversion, encourages us to believe that no one is incapable of change. People do change conceptual systems. Conversions take place all the time. People who used to be humanist or naturalist or atheist or followers of competing religious faith have found reasons to turn away from their own conceptual systems and embrace Christianity. Conversely, people who used to profess allegiance to Christianity reach a point where they may feel they can no longer believe. Well, that's because they weren't true believers. Of course, we must all recognize that many changes regarding worldviews have little or nothing to do with Christian conversion. Even the noted Christian writer C.S. Lewis admitted that he abandoned a naturalistic worldview in favor of an intellectual acceptance of the Christian worldview months before his actual conversion. In spite of all the obstacles I have noted, people do occasionally begin to doubt conceptual systems they had accepted for years, and sometimes, as we know, people make dramatic changes in their beliefs. I just want to say that the reason someone does come to believe is to have true saving faith is because the Holy Spirit has come into their life and they have a real saving faith. And it's only until they have a saving faith are they really saved. Okay? That only is the work of the Holy Spirit. But discussing and dialoguing with people, questioning them, getting them to think things through, presenting the truth, God can use that to bring people to salvation. Yeah? Is it possible to identify a single set of necessary conditions that will always be present when people change a worldview? I doubt it. After all, as I have pointed out, many people remain unaware that they have a worldview, even though the sudden change in their lives and thoughts resulted from their exchanging one worldview for another. It does seem clear that dramatic changes like this usually require time for one to work through doubts about key elements of the worldview. Even when the change appears to have been sudden, it was in all likelihood preceded by a period of growing uncertainty and doubt. In many cases, the actual change is triggered by a significant event, often a crisis of some kind. But I have also heard some people recount stories that laid out different scenarios. Suddenly, or so it seemed, an event or a piece of new information led them to think in terms of conceptual schemes that was totally different from them. Quite unexpectedly, these people saw things that they had overlooked before, or they suddenly saw matters fit together in a pattern that brought meaning where none had been discernible before. Hiya, guys. Let me explain what he's saying there. You go into a dog's home, you've got Chihuahuas, you've got Dobermans, you've got shepherd dogs. Yeah, you got all these different sizes, shapes of dogs, right? It would be foolish of you to go into that dog's home and get a Chihuahua and expect that little Chihuahua to be a race dog. It would be stupid. Or to get that little Chihuahua to be your guard dog. It would be stupid. Every dog is different. So when you're doing worldview analysis with someone, don't think it's a quick fix. Don't think you can just destroy their view and they're going to become a Christian. Number one, being a Christian is a supernatural event. It is by the power of the Holy Spirit. You can't convert anybody. We preach Christ crucified, Paul said. Listen to this. We preach Christ crucified. God has not called me to baptize, but to preach Christ, says Paul. That's in 1 Corinthians chapter 1. So you can't convert anybody. It's the Holy Spirit. He does it in his time, in his way. But when you're talking to someone, you mustn't have the idea of crushing the person in debate or discussion. No, we're not doing Protestant or Eastern Orthodoxy as a debate, friend. Please listen to the study. You're going off topic. We're doing worldview analysis. So you put me off now, Fred. I had it cleared in my mind what I was saying. Let me just get back onto what I was saying, bro. So yeah, so everybody's different. So don't get into this worldview axe machine. I meet this Muslim, I'll do my worldview analysis, chop, dealt with that. I meet this Hindu, I'll do my worldview analysis, chop, I dealt with that. I've made this atheist, I do my worldview analysis, chop, I dealt with that. As if like you've got this well-oiled machine and you just destroy other people's worldviews. That's what the Muslim Dawah teams do. They chop people, chop people, chop people. No, everybody's different. When you're talking to someone, use worldview analysis, but everybody's different. A Chihuahua is not the same as a Doberman. Each person is different. So listen to their story, listen to where they've come from, and realize that as you're engaging in worldview analysis and getting to know what they believe, and you're able to critique what they're saying, you're depending on the Holy Spirit, and the Spirit of God can convert them right there, but that He might be doing it over a longer period of time. Your job is to sow the seed, but to do it in a way that's loving and gracious, not in a kind of machete way where you're, right, I've dealt with that one, smash that worldview, smash that worldview. People are different. Systems of belief are different. People change their minds on important subjects for a bewildering variety of reasons or non-reasons. It is foolish, therefore, to try and cram all the possibilities and reasons for life transforming changes into any given pattern. The major elements of a worldview. What kind of beliefs make up a worldview? A well-rounded worldview includes beliefs in at least 5 major areas: God, reality, knowledge, and morality. Number 1, God. Number 1, God. The most important element of any worldview is what it says or does not say about God. Worldviews differ greatly on this matter. Does God even exist? What is the nature of God? Is there only one true God? Is God a personal being? That is a God, the kind of being who can love and act, or is God an impersonal force or power? Because of conflicting views about the nature of God, such systems as Buddhism, Hinduism, Shintoism, Zoroastrianism are not only different religions, they embrace different worldviews, because Christianity, Judaism, and Islam are examples of theism. Conservative adherents of these religions hold to worldviews that have more in common than they do with the dualistic, polytheistic, and pantheistic systems. One essential component, then, of any worldview is its view of God. It would be a mistake to regard self-described atheists as an exception to the points made in the previous paragraph. If we understand a person's God to be that which is one's ultimate concern, then there really is no such thing as an atheist. Someone named Jones may deny that the God of the Bible exists. He may even be foolish enough to believe that he has no God at all, but perceptive people will readily observe that there is something in life that functions as an object of ultimate concern for Jones. It may be sex or money, or perhaps something as noble as love for his family or the poor. As John Calvin observed, every human being is incurably religious. It is our nature to give ourselves wholeheartedly and unreservedly, even if one occasions that something may be nothing more than the better of self. But whatever that object of ultimate concern is for us, that will be our God. For this reason, genuine atheists do not exist. Indeed, we find those who adore or worship things of ideals in place of the one true God. All such people fall under the judgment implicit in the first commandment in Exodus 23. So we find out, do they believe in God? If they don't believe in God, that's going to have a big impact on how we view abortion, how we view all sorts of things, you know. The other issue of worldview is ultimate reality. A worldview also includes belief about ultimate reality, a subject often discussed under the terms of metaphysics. In the philosophical thinking of thinkers like Plato and Aristotle, metaphysics often becomes a complex and mysterious subject. But a person's worldview need not be complicated in order for it to include metaphysical beliefs. Those beliefs include answers to such questions as these: what is the relationship between God and the universe? Is the existence of the universe a brute fact? Is the universe eternal? Did an eternal, personal, omnipotent God create the world? Are God and the world co-eternal and interdependent? Is the world best understood in a mechanistic, that is, non-purposeful way, or is there a purpose to the universe? What is the ultimate nature of the universe? Is the cosmos ultimately material or spiritual or something else? Is the universe self-enclosed system in the sense that everything that happens is caused and thus explained by other events with the system, or can a supernatural reality, a being beyond the natural order, act casually within nature? Are miracles possible? So you can ask them, what's your view about God? What's your view about ultimate reality? And that will tell you a lot about where they are at. Knowledge. The third component of a worldview is one's view of knowledge. Even people not given to philosophical pursuits hold beliefs on the subject. So it's like you meet someone and say, what do you believe? They say, I only believe in science. So that's a particular worldview about how to gain knowledge is only by science. But that is called technically scientism, and it's a limited way of knowing. We can know other ways of knowing, like music or art. It's a very limited understanding of knowledge. Regardless of their answer, the reply will identify one element of their epistemology. Other questions include the following: can we trust our senses? What are the proper roles of reason and sense experience in knowledge? Do we apprehend our own states of consciousness in some way or other than reason and sense experience? Are intuitions of our own states of consciousness more dependable than our perceptions of the external world? Is truth relative, or must truth be the same for all rational beings? What is the relationship between religious faith and reason? Is the scientific method the only or perhaps the best method of knowledge? Is knowledge about God possible? If so, how? Can God reveal himself to human beings? Can God reveal information to human beings? So you've got the doctrine of God, of ultimate reality, of knowledge. Then you've got ethics. Most people are more aware of the ethical components of their worldview than of their beliefs about metaphysics and epistemology. We make moral judgments about the conduct of individuals, ourselves and others, and about nations. The kinds of ethical beliefs that are important in this context, however, are more basic than moral judgments about single actions. It's one thing to say that an action of a human being like Saddam Hussein or of a nation like Iraq is morally wrong, but ethics as a worldview factor is more concerned with the question of why that action is wrong. And there are moral laws that govern human conduct. What are they? Are these moral laws the same of all human beings? Is the morality total subjective, or is there an objective dimension? So every worldview includes a number of important beliefs concerning about human beings. So a worldview has its understanding of God or no God, of reality, of ethics, and now of humankind. Every worldview includes a number of important beliefs about human beings. Examples include the following: are human beings free, or are they merely pawns of a deterministic force? Or is there an alternative to these extremes? Are human beings only bodies or material beings? Or were all the religions and philosophical thinkers correct who talked about the human soul, or who distinguished the mind from the body? If they were right in some sense, what is the human soul or mind, or how is it related to the body? Does physical death end the existence of the human person, or is there consciousness, personal survival after death? So these are the key issues, the big ones that you can focus on. Additional questions. Are the 5 points just noted only components of what may be properly called a worldview. While the correct answer is no, consciously held beliefs about other elements of a worldview appear to be less common. I will comment on two. A person's worldview may also include a set of ideals that lays out how he or she thinks things should be. These ideals produce a gap between the way things are and the way they ought to be, regardless of the actual conditions that may exist in one of life's or society. One may have a vision or a picture of how things ought to be different. Perhaps there should be less stupidity or corruption among politicians. Perhaps I should lose my temper less often. Perhaps my eating habits should be different. A well-informed view may also contain an explanation for the disparity between the way things are and the way things ought to be. Marxists, for example, are prone to blame what they see as problems on the institutions of capitalism. Christianity attributes the discrepancy between ideal and actual existence to the pervasiveness of sin. Because my purpose thus far has been to make a complicated subject as clear as possible, I've been forced to oversimplify some things. This is a good time to make an important qualification. I do not want to suggest the adherents of the same general worldview will necessarily agree on every issue. Any account of worldviews that implies total unanimity is grossly mistaken. Even Christians who share beliefs on all essential issues may disagree on other important points. They may understand the relationship between human freedom and the sovereignty of God in different ways. They may disagree over how a revealed law of God applies to a 21st century situation. They may quibble publicly over complex issues like national defense, capital punishment, and the welfare state, to say nothing about the issues that divide Christendom into different denominations. Do these manifold and important disagreements undercut the case I've been making about the nature of Christ's worldview? Not at all. A careful study of these disagreements will reveal that there are differences within a border of family of beliefs. When a Christian argues with another Christian over any issue, one way he justifies his position and tries to persuade the other is to show that his view is more consistent with the basic tenets of someone else's Christian worldview. Also, it is important to recognize that disagreements over essential Christian beliefs should result in the disputant being regarded as one who has left the former family of belief, however much he or she desires to continue to use the label. For example, many liberals in the West continue to use the Christian label for views that are clearly inconsistent with the beliefs of historic Christianity. Whether they deny the Trinity or the personality of God, or the doctrine of creation, or the fact of human depravity, or the doctrine of salvation by grace, they make clear that the religious system they espouse is totally different from what has traditionally been meant by Christianity. In conclusion, whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not, each of us has a worldview. These worldviews function as interpretive conceptual schemes to explain why we see the world as we do, why we often think and act as we do. Competing worldviews often come into conflict. These clashes may be as terrible as a simple argument between people, or as serious as a war between nations. It's important, therefore, for us to understand that competing worldviews are the fundamental cause of disagreement. Worldviews are double-edged swords. An inadequate conceptual scheme can, like improper eyeglasses, hinder our efforts to understand God, the world, and ourselves. The right conceptual scheme can suddenly bring everything into focus. So let's recap on this issue of worldviews. Basically, remember that it's God that converts people. He can do it suddenly or he can do it over a long period of time. Remember that not to treat everybody the same. There are some that are knowledgeable, some that are not. You have to be patient and scratch underneath and get to know where they're at so that you can help that person. Okay. I think that those are some of the main lessons. And know that when people are resisting your arguments or what you're saying, it doesn't necessarily mean your arguments are no good. They're holding to things because of some deeper issues that you need to find out what they are. All right. Anyhow, I'm going to do in 10 minutes time. I'm going to do Reformed systematic theology. So I hope this worldview analysis will encourage you to read the book and to think about it and use some of the ideas for your street evangelism. God bless you and love you all. Thank you to Papa S and Lion Orthodoxy, Han, and any others out there, Fred, that have come. God bless you all.